Bingo. All right, we're good. What's up? So thanks for showing up again. Really cool to see a lot of familiar faces. We're about week 2 now?
Week 2.
Week 2, right? So we know that it's gonna get busier over the course of the semester, so those who are keeping up, that's awesome. So today let's talk about Wireshark, capture, inspection, the domain of network security, and then Bryce is gonna talk more about lateral movement, right? We're gonna try to do our best here to respond to exactly what was told on Tuesday, and then we're gonna follow that up with a couple of demonstrations to get you acquainted with the same tools. Some of them were mentioned on Tuesday, but now we're gonna put on our blue hats and start thinking like people who can actually use these in a sense that we're investigating something out of them. Couple of announcements.
Through that. Okay, so thanks to Henry and Ronan's efforts, the cyber range is back up and running. All of you should be able to continue to access your Pwny OS boxes and keep working through some of our challenges with that. And in addition to that, one of our first competitions is coming up. It's the Cyber Force run by the Department of Energy. Right now, we're looking at adding a second team to that. So if any of you all are interested, feel free to reach out in the Discord, put your names in the hat, and we'll see what we can do with that. And unfortunately, High Storm, which is another one of the competitions we went to last year, is unfortunately canceled, but it'll be back next year.
So real quick, before we move on from this announcement here, Cyberforce, if you want to ask me more questions about that, come to me after the meeting. Also, I'd be happy to put together a quick little 30-minute like voice chat webinar with you guys. If you want to come ask us questions about what our experience was like. So we'll plan to do that at some point after today. Here's your flag.
Yes.
Hope you enjoy it.
Don't sniff other things. That is not great for your nostrils or sorry.
Hence the inspo for the flag. We like to have fun. All right. We're going to talk about network forensics, right? Wireshark, Nmap, lateral movement. Bryce is going to show you a little bit more about PS exec and what that entails.
Cool.
All right, let me just make a PSA about that info real quick.
Okay.
Last night you guys received the ping, perhaps. Turns out that was not resolved. So as of right now, Pwny OS can be accessed from the public internet as well as Illinois net, but the range that we set up is only accessible through Illinois net. Again, we'll try to contact Ingrid and have them open up the VPN port so everyone can use it outside of Illinois net. We'll work on that.
Okay, we'll push an update ASAP then in that case.
Thanks, Henry.
Henry, we're talking about network forensics now.
Indeed. All right. So a brief introduction to this. Kind of the whole reason why we're using Wireshark, which is to do network forensics. You might be asking, Bryce, what the heck are you talking about? So network forensics is, you can read it off the slide, you're monitoring computer network traffic that you're generating, that the people that you're talking to are generating, and pretty much anything that's talking on the internet is going to be generating traffic. This usually happens real time, whether you have like an intrusion detection system set up, firewalls, anything that's going to be looking at the packets that are crossing over a network. And where the forensics part comes in is when you have those captures of network traffic, you're looking at it post-incident to figure out what happened. Was there an incident? Was there not an incident? Something malicious happened or not? And this helps you establish, again, what happened, but also a timeline to see and what steps or basically what happened when. And once you get an idea of how that occurred, those findings normally reported to business executives and C-suites, kind of what we do in Cyberforce and also CCDC.
Also, and one thing I wanted to also touch on is the idea of a digital artifact is exactly what you can imagine it is. It's any piece of information that you find during an investigation of sorts, right? Or your inquiry into looking into an incident that is relevant to supporting your claim that X is the case about that incident, right? So that's the kind of stuff that you water down and then report up the ladder if you're in an organization. Why is that important though? Right. So, when it comes to like a data breach, and network traffic is one of the best things to start with, because as he just told you, everything pretty much generates network traffic if it's communicating in an infrastructure. We can establish an idea of what's suspicious and what's normal, right? So as a good analyst in an organization like that, generally speaking, you understand what's normal behavior of your network, right? And there's a few obvious things that are gonna jump out at you, but then you're gonna need a tool like Wireshark to break it down even further before you realize something is actually messed up, right? But investigating is also oftentimes a legal issue. So you need concrete evidence to back up claims that something happened that you need to defend against. So that's why we have tools that are like this to begin with, right? Logs and artifacts that you pull together that you can say, this is exactly how I know that X happened, and this is how we're going to try to remediate it. But also, you know, there are regulators in an industry that are looking at that kind of thing, and they're basically holding you to the standard that you're aware of your actual infrastructure. Because if you're clueless, that's not going to look good either.
Cool. And just to add one last thing, once you figure out what happened and the how, you're able to determine the tactics for how the attacker operated, and then in turn develop different measures to detect that faster, better, and prevent that from even happening in the first place. So again, it's that step of once you find something that happened, figure out a way to stop it, and it just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling.
And the really big point, something that we often did in tracer fire, was establish and reconstruct the timeline of events from the moment that you believe that you were compromised to how they can possibly use that information that they obtained somehow to traverse through your network, to pivot once they're in it. This is how you start.
Okay, cool. So, as we alluded to earlier, there's mainly two main areas for the cyber defense server network. One is proactive detection. So this is where like your intrusion detection systems and prevention systems occur, where you're live time reading through packets using deep packet inspection or other methods and trying to detect things as they occur. Yeah, there's various detection methods up there as well. And the second is all post-incident forensics. So this is just like whole PCAP file or packet captures you've collected and are going through there to, again, get that time. All right, and to go over the data types, I think you've heard me say packet capture more than a few times by now, but what that is just stored packet data, and it's quite literally the raw data of what was sent over the network. It manages to protect all headers, for example, in your HTTP headers, any data payloads in there, timestamps is when that is sent over. However, because there's so much information contained within them, it's extremely difficult to store at scale because there's so much data in it. And so that's where, actually, we'll get to that in a second. There's also next generation PCAPs, which just have more features. You can read those there. And then because those two are very data intensive, you have net flows, which are just basically condensed down versions of that, where you only get the metadata as to what was transmitted. So source and destination IP addresses, ports, how much data was transmitted and when again. And this is just easier to look at when you're protecting, let's say, millions of devices and there's no way to process everything as a whole.
But what we're going to be really mainly focused on, because of the kind of scale at which we're operating, which isn't much, it's pretty tiny, PCAP files. It's going to be the most common data type that you're going to be working with, at least when you're doing this kind of work.
True that.
So let's talk about a Wireshark. We'll leave the demos for once we get through this. But it's very, very powerful. It's an open source network protocol analyzer, actually derived from the libpcap, right? The Python libpcap module, I think. And so it allows users to capture and interactively browse the traffic running on a computer network, right? So what makes this software amazing is that it allows you to dissect the different OSI components and actually see that for yourself, right? Headers, payloads, footers, what protocol, what kind of traffic source, destination IPs, you know, just to start. I can't really explain everything right now, but when you are able to break down all these layers of the OSI model and determine what kind of infrastructure was used to transfer a packet over, or request information, things like that. Often helps you in identifying what is that adversarial system, right? And so Wireshark is a great way to actually break this down. Now, we'll touch on this later. The interface generally looks like this when you have a packet capture. Okay, and I'll explain a little bit earlier or later about like what any of these icons pretty much look like, but you'll start a capture, you can stop a capture. And you'll see hundreds, sometimes thousands of rows, depending on how long, and this could happen in seconds, that you flick that switch on and off to capture traffic. And within each of these packets, you can select them, use the drop-down menu to check out all the different components of that data packet itself. And then you got binary. That's just going to be located on the right-hand side. But also, what we're going to really emphasize today is that it provides to you the function or the feature of looking at a protocol hierarchy. So, like I said, breaks down these OSI components, right? But protocol is a part of it too. So lower level protocols like Ethernet, which are going to be found more on your physical layer, right? And then higher level protocols at the application layer, layer 7, right? Like SMB would be sandwiched closer towards the bottom. It's presented to you in the form of a drop-down menu. So the interface could feel like at first it's a lot to look at, but you have the option to look at what you want to look at, if that makes any sense, right? And that's why you expand these to investigate things that you find interesting. For example, maybe you want to use the statistics, and we'll talk about that in a second, on Wireshark and view hierarchical pop-ups about like POP talking IP addresses or POP protocols used in that traffic capture, which might give you a good place to start looking at what kinds of systems I really want to start targeting my investigation or setting it around. Does that make sense?
Through that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now you have a bit of an idea about what we're going to be going over and also the tool you're going to use, Wireshark. The thing that we need to focus on is, again, our defined deviations and any malicious activity is to define the baselines, like Michael said earlier. And so the way you normally do that is top talking IP addresses. What are the devices that are generating the most traffic? And this could be because, one, they're sending up a whole bunch of data out of the network as part of a data exfiltration. They could be, I don't know, porting over a bunch of malicious binaries to, again, continue to escalate the privileges on a device. So that helps you get an idea of anything that is especially malicious out there. And underneath each point, we're going to have a way to find this in Wireshark. Also, the different devices they're talking to each other. This can be big clues, like you normally wouldn't have a mail server probably engaging in, I don't know, SSH to a name server. That probably shouldn't happen. And if you know like what IPs are which, you can figure that out pretty quickly. Same thing is with used protocols. Like I said, if you have devices that are locked down and only should be using certain things, if they're, I don't know, suddenly RDPing to another device, help you figure out what is off in a network.
So you guys notice these 3 bullet points here. Statistics, endpoints, pretty much lays out all the different endpoints, source and IP addresses, right? Pulled together into a list for you. That's one thing. Conversations, meaning actual instances where an endpoint and another endpoint were observed communicating together. So they'll lay that out for you too. And then the protocol hierarchy, which shows you kind of the frequencies at which the conversations in this traffic capture, what protocols and things like that they were using, right? So this essentially is a platform that is made to present, I don't even know how to call it, millions of facts in one spot, right? So what's even cooler too about this is the querying that you're able to do in a traffic capture through Wireshark is not as hard as you think it is. If you've ever had any experience with querying things, it's going to be your best friend. And it's also very easy to pick up too. So I'll show you in a demo, like what my thought process is for like my first like query that I want to try out to just see what I'm looking at in a traffic capture. These things that we just talked about are gonna be your best friend.
All right, cool. All right, and so once you have a packet capture in Wireshark, I think you're going, after you look through it for a little bit, is to, and maybe once you've identified something that you want to look at, like SMB traffic, sitting a whole bunch of data between one IP address. Or any of these other protocols that we've looked up on there. Once you have those, you're going to want to try and identify different artifacts in there. So for HTTP and HTTPS, that could be reaching out to suspicious domains. Like there's a whole bunch of alphanumerical characters all sponged in a row or whatever, and that it is not normal for users to be accessing. That could be something. Unusual URLs, some strange user agents. That's another key point. Or excessive logins that could be evidence of a brute force attack. Same thing with DNS. If there's a bunch of queries for known malicious domains, that'll throw it off. And again, there's a whole list of there. We're not going to be able to cover all these today. That takes time on your own hands to go through and get that knowledge. So we'll go through that. But again, every protocol has its normal behavior that's expected. That can vary from environment to environment, but there's a pretty decent standard there. And just knowing what it should look like and also what it shouldn't look like is very useful in this field.
But remember that people who want to cause harm are also thinking the same thing that you're going to be thinking, that they probably have a guess as to what you're going to be looking out for, right? So they know that you're an analyst who's looking for odd and abnormal behavior, right? And if they really want to operate on a level that's a little bit more stealthy than, usual, they'll try to facilitate their communications in a network such that it appears as similar as possible to what they can think your normal traffic would look like. But also, protocols have limits as to how much data can actually be transferred, depending on what protocol it is. So Wireshark will show you that those packets are pretty much broken down by data length in itself. So one other thing to just be wary of is you can't just base it off of how much data is being ingressed and egressed alone, although that's a good place to look. Knowing the actual architecture of your infrastructure is even better, right? Like he just said, there's no reason that a mail server should be SSHing into any other device on the network when you know that it's not an actual device that's meant to be like used like that. It's meant to sit there and facilitate things, right? And so it's just a matter of knowing that IP is tied to that device. Now, we talked a little bit about Nmap because Ronan walked you through a lot of that too, but I'm going to tell you about why we actually like to use it in terms of being a blue teamer. So it stands for network mapper. Forget everything that you just heard about on Tuesday about how to use this as an adversary. I want you to think about why it's important that you could use a tool to actually look over the topology of your network itself. So what is Nmap? Well, it's been around for like 27 years. Right?
Give or take.
Yeah, a long time. Longer than I've been alive. And that's a long time too. It's an open source security auditing tool. And we call it security auditing because it's primarily what you're going to use if you're a blue teamer. You're using it in the sense that you're auditing your network. And it actually is capable of sending specially crafted packets to target systems over your network. Target systems meaning specific IPs that you can basically throw in your terminal. So those specific packets return information about your target systems, right? Maybe information about the operating system, and there's a way we can do it. Running services, open ports, right? You kind of heard about this earlier. But that's where you start. So as an adversary, you'd use the information about those to determine any points of entry. That's the only kind of adversarial thinking you'll want to use as a blue teamer, right? Okay. Let me think about why I need something open. Why is it open? And what's the state it's currently in? And do I need that open? So that's the question you're going to continue to ask to combat the idea that people are going to want to use the information that they find through those queries and scans, I should say, in response to that. So this is a remediation or a step in the remediation process or investigating things or keeping a proactive inventory of things that are happening in a sense, just as much as it is something that can be weaponized. And a lot of what we're going to talk about on Purple Team has to do with you can weaponize something and make it your offensive tool, just as much as you can think of it on the other end of things and use it in the opposite manner. What we're going to tell you about today are TCP and UDP scans, okay? Because we talked a lot about how earlier we were mainly concerned with the transport layer of the OSI model, right? And so TCP and UDP is often what we're going to be looking at. So a TCP scan, you guys probably have heard of the three-way handshake, yeah? Okay, cool.
Last time, Michael.
We did go over that?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to make sure people remembered that. So to execute the scan, what it does is it initiates a SYN flag to the target IP, right? And then it'll return or await for acknowledgement or other SYN acknowledgement flags in return as a response from the target IP. That's how you know, that's how Nmap tells you that that IP is responding or can tell you more information about what ports and services are operating and are open or closed on that IP. For a UDP scan, right, it's a broadcast to identify open and closed ports. So that's when you're going to see port, state, and service in the output. I already told you a little bit earlier, but essentially the kind of questions that you ask is just how open is my network? Just how active is it? Is it essential for what I need to use it for? And I have a typo, sorry about that down here. But as an organization, maybe you want to allow system administrators or specific people who have necessary privs or the job titles to actually do this kind of a thing, to be able to have the right to use Nmap and check out like their own infrastructure over time. So it's not really something that you want people to be publicly able to successfully use against you, which is exactly why I'm going to tell you a little disclaimer. Don't scan the Illinois net as much as possible. Don't do that, because if they see that, they're going to want to ask questions about why are people scanning our network. You see, you got an analyst on the other line who is already asking that kind of a question. So when to use it, why to use it, where to use it, we're about to show you soon. I'll skip past this in a second. We want to talk about lateral movement.
Okay.
We'll do all of our demos after.
Indeed. So we're on the second half of the presentation now, a little bit more about lateral movement and how we will be detecting that. So as a brief intro to lateral movement, I mean, you should be able to kind of picture that it's not like getting down and shuffling across the floor like you do in sports, even though it'd be probably a little bit more fun and physically energizing than sitting at your computer and doing this. Alas, here we are. So it's the process by which attackers from the entry point in the network, they're going to be spreading to other devices on the network to just expand their control, gain access to more and more sensitive data and other services. They can continue their process of attack across the network. One of the most common ways this occurs is going to be with stolen credentials that they might have already gotten from their entry point, and they're going to be using various remote access protocols like remote desk protocol, secure shell, virtual networks, and etc. And so what we'll be covering today is going to be PS exec, which is a Microsoft developed tool that uses server message block to just gain access to, or do file transfers, create named pipes and all that jazz. Now, quick question. Do any of you recognize what like the TA and T1 strings mean? Oh, man in the back.
I guess that it's from minor attack.
Yes, thank you.
Can you tell us your name?
Ryan.
Ryan, thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone remember what that was? All right. I'll see you, go for it.
The attack framework developed by Commander, it basically lists out the difference in like attack and classifies categories.
Yes, so with lateral movement, this is a tactic in the form of like tactics, techniques, and procedures. Each of the ones is getting a little bit more specific. Lateral movement is a tactic. It's like something that attackers are generally going to want to do. And then like remote access for lateral movement is a technique. That's why it's T and the TA difference there. And this just helps us like narrow things down that attackers generally do into smaller subcategories. Just a little bit of callback there for everyone. All right. So a little bit more in depth. So depending on how a network is going to be created, how it's segmented, what the network devices are in the way, an attacker is going to want to know where they should go once they've established a base point somewhere. Because if there's a similar server and like the same subnet that the attacker initially got in, going to that server likely isn't going to do much for them because it's in the same area, doing similar things. But if they can break into a different subnet, more in their internal network that hosts all sort of like financial information, that seems like a lot better target, doesn't it? So they're going to want to go there. And this, of course, requires additional network reconnaissance. Just like rinse and repeat. You got to figure out where you are, what you can do from each box, and just keep building on there. And again, the end goal is to get as much information as you can and do, well, in our case, learn a lot, but in real life, attackers are going to be going for various things of financial nature. Yeah.
So what can the computer which they're already attacked have that their own computer already doesn't have to reach like computer number 3? Like, they're using the second computer to reach the third computer. So
Yes.
what all is the second computer possibly having that is allowing it to go through this chain?
So there could be any number of tools installed already. If they got like a computer that like an admin uses, like we're going to talk about PS exec. It's like a protocol that allows you to remotely execute commands and like send files over the network. So they could use PS exec from like computer 2 to send like a malicious binary over to computer 3, execute that, or just use logins to go to that computer.
Here's on those things, like, yeah,
Absolutely.
so there's like a ton of factors that go into this, right? It's gonna be really dependent on how your target network is set up. There's two really common things we see for real that work together that make attacking a cyclical process. The first, up until the last couple of years, is that you could reliably dump all of the credentials for people logged into your computer. So you had someone from another computer logged into your computer, you could dump their password hash and then potentially use it to log back into their computer. That was a piece of material, piece of information that facilitated that login. The other things that is located somewhere else in your network, right? So if you have a web server out here, you have your internal company, now you have your attacker. The attacker can't reach over into the internal network, right? You have to go through the server. So a lot of times lateral movement is going to be a combination of getting around network segmentation from certain things not going to talk to other things, as well as you're going to be kind of rolling through like, hey, I got new information, where does this get me? And that's why there's a saying, right, for like the initial bloodhound tool, 6 degrees of domain admin, because if you think about human trust relationships, right, and how normal like IT will have multiple tiers of admins, usually it's going to be 6 or less hops to go from unprivileged to all of the privileges. So.
Thanks for that, Rowan. Explain it much better than I can. All right, cool.
So you break into a house, right? But you're in one of those rooms, but every single door has a lock on it. And you need to know how to unlock or bypass that door that's preventing you from getting to the other rooms of the house. That's what network segmentation does to kind of mitigate against that, but also that's what adversaries are working to get around. It's pretty much what he was just telling you there.
Suchit?
Also, additionally, if you're able to take over like a trusted user in that way, they do this a lot with like Instagram apps. They'll have somebody, you already know, and they'll send you a link, and because you trust that person, you click on the link. It's an everyday example. WhatsApp, Instagram, a lot of these like easy access points. That's another advantage because once you're in the network, you have this assumed identity.
Prove that.
And depending on how smart an adversary is, they might either jump on that or be patient with what they've gotten their access to, because sometimes it takes a lot longer to actually execute the kind of attack that they really want to. How many months on average, Ronan? Like what, 6 months?
For what?
Once somebody's in a network, do they actually start
It
screwing
depends on the
around?
skill of the adversary. I mean, we've seen 12 times upward of 2 years of Russian groups, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, if we look at like the Chinese exploits of SharePoint, it's about 3 seconds. Because it would run a 0 to be like net user, who am I? IP is big, right? So your dwell time completely depends on your tactics, right? Or I guess if you're going by the MITRE terminology, your techniques of the specific methodology you're using, right? But for disciplined threat actors, it's going to be between 90 days, 6 months, and forever.
Think intelligence gathering, right? You don't want to tip people off that you're in, you just want to stay in.
Through that. All right, so the lateral movement technique we're going to be focusing on today is using PS exec. And so these following slides, they're going to be a lot more technical than what we have been presenting on recently. So I'm just going to run through them real quick. And then we have a lab for you after this, which is going to be focusing on detecting PS exec abuse in a network. And so we're just going to leave these here as a reference for you. So if you have a question like, hey, what does that do? You can look back at these real quick and be like, I know what that means. All right, so PS exec, it's a lightweight telnet. Does anyone know what telnet is? Wow, wow, wow.
Okay.
Yes, that's what
SSH plus.
Exactly. No encryption whatsoever. Why would we need that? Basically, that's exactly what it is. It just allows you to get remote access, gain command line execution. Very nice. But it's a binary, generally binary that Microsoft developed that uses server message block to basically allow sysadmins to do a great number of things. They can install, update software, modify different configurations. Also do a lot of just a lot of great remote administration tools. But because it's so freaking cool, attackers love it, or variants of it to again do lateral movement, execute commands on various systems, bring in different files or bring out different files. And so because attacker admins legitimately use it, it helps them blend in with other legitimate sysadmin activities. And so we're going to give a brief bit on how it works. So I think I mentioned it twice before, but it uses SMB over TCP 445. That's a pretty common one, so I lock that away if you can. Brief and one quick note, it has to be administrator level privileges. If you don't have that, you cannot start the service because it requires like log on as a service privileges, which we're not going to go that deep in Windows yet. Ronan will hit that in a few weeks. But once you get that, it installs the PS exe service executable to the admin share. That's also something you can keep an eye on. This basically acts as an intermediary, so you can do RCE. So once you have that executable installed, it launches and establishes 3 named pipes. You'll see those in the lab, and these basically allow inter-process communication from where you're running PS exec from and where you're the target system that has the PS exe SEC executable on it. And so there's a bit of information on there. The pipes are really nice because pretty much everything that acts like PS exec has those. I think the real reason why that we're talking about this is that there's open source versions of this. PS exec is generally distributed as a binary where you don't have the source code, but if you want to develop applications with it, you generally need those libraries or something. So those aren't called PS exec, but they have similar features like the pipes. And so once you install that service, there's like I mentioned earlier with the logon as a service right. If that all starts up successfully, then administration or malicious activity. I don't know what's going on right now with my voice, but then whatever is going on starts. But if that fails because you lack required privileges or sysadmins are smart and have decent security policies in place, in certain cases, they're a bit wonky there, but then we won't be able to run it successfully. But sometimes that executable and the pipes still remain on the system, and that's how you can kind of tell that this was attempted. If you're doing more endpoint forensics, it's kind of hard to see that right now. Yeah. And abuse detection. We're going to run through this real quick, and then we'll start hitting the demos. So what you can do is monitor the creation of the PS exe SEC executable and the associated EULA keys. Those keys are important because in order to run PS exec on a target, you have to accept the EULA agreement. And so that creates a permanent key in the registry that you can access. Also, track the normally high volume SMB traffic. So especially between unusual hosts, if they aren't normally talking a lot, or if PS exec is not used between them, that'll key you off. You should also alert on admin share access, admin, which is just like a general file share, and then IPC, which is for the inter-process communication. Just focus on those by accounts that normally do that. And also just basic techniques, document every user, any credentials you get based on this in order to identify compromised users. And yeah, that's about all we're going to focus on today. Yeah,
So
right.
before we go through this, we can briefly go over what SMB is.
Okay.
We actually talked about that.
Got it.
So if you guys have ever put up a Windows computer and then hit like, I would like to talk to computers in my local network, and you see those computers pop up. SMB is like the default thing that Windows computers use to like talk to one another. It's a very common peer-to-peer like service, right? It's generally gonna be on by default in a lot of cases. And it lets you do a bunch of different things as long as you have a valid login. So you can basically read and write files over the entire disk. You can start services, which is how you get the remote code execution is you drop a file and then you start a service, which is also that file. And then I just want to go over that because this is very, very common to see on Windows computers. And then you'll see they'll talk through pipes, which we don't really need to get into now. That's a way of transferring data, like whatever you want at all, by just sending it through a certain name on this TCP port 445. And the OS will track input and output through those pipes. That's how you get your output when you're running like a command, for example.
True that.
Again, if you want to learn more about OS fundamentals, go take 391 or the inferior 341.
Either or, pick your poison. But yeah, I think that's about it for the slides. Yeah, Michael, if you want to take it away with your first demo.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Move
you
the
might-
slide up to the first demo.
First demo, okay, yeah.
Also share your entire screen, otherwise it's big.
Sure, I can get on there.
I need a problem.
All right.
So, real quick. For those of us who are online, we have 3 people. Just give us a couple minutes here. Oh, Henry and Kyle. Okay.
You mind if I plug in?
Yep, let's do it. We're gonna plug in Bryce's laptop. So we're gonna have a hiccup. Let's be ready.
And how are we gonna do the meeting?
To do that, go back to the Zoom room. Bro,
You're muted, by the way.
I am muted. I just realized that. Share my screen. I want entire screen. Okay, can you guys see pretty well? Cool. So,
Blow up your font size just a little.
yeah, sorry. Shift. Let's maximize one of these windows here. We'll do another one here too. A little better?
Much better.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, looks good too. So I've got a couple applications open here. One, I've got Wireshark open on a Kali VM. Okay. I got a browser open just because I could generate traffic and mix it in there with the PCAP. But to be honest with you, that's not really a priority. What I'm going to start doing right now is get Nmap running. Okay. What I want to do is first show you a TCP scan. This is going to be similar to what we were talking briefly about on Tuesday as well. But again, the whole point is to show you what it actually looks like in a traffic capture. So the flag for that is scan, scan, capital S. I'm going to use my IP just because it'd be easier for the sake of doing this right now. 136, 135, and just for the case of me maybe looking back on this a little bit later, let me just call this a purple syn cat. Type in my password. But before I hit enter, I'm going to go to Wireshark and nope, sorry. I want to start a packet capture. Yeah. So select my interface, Ethernet 0, start the capture so that's ready in advance. Now I hit enter. You're going to start seeing a couple things come up. So what Nmap just did.
Michael, it looks like it immediately
Yeah.
bailed out. Get
Why
rid of
did
the
it bail
carrot
out?
and then run it again.
Yep.
It should take a little longer to if you want to save it out, then do like output normal, but you see your Nmap command line immediately went away. It'll take a little bit of time. So,
Yeah, you're right.
Get rid of the greater than sign and run it again.
Let's just do that instead.
Okay, never mind. Yours is way faster than mine, I guess.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, notice that DNS can also we did a SYN scan, right? So that's the TCP scan, right? DNS can operate on both TCP and UDP. I'll show you the UDP scan in a second. It might also come up as DNS, just depending on how my system's set up. But just notice the kind of traffic that it did generate. If I were to, how do I edit my view here? Can you zoom in?
Yeah, local hosts, that's like.
Yeah, I could just do that instead.
Also do like a service and like script scan, so it generates more traffic.
Yeah, maybe that's even better. All right, well. Map S, I want SYN scan, nope, I want that, and I want, what is it, SN?
SV.
SV. SV 120.
Yeah.
Oh, my bad. My local address.
You might want to change the interface to LO in that case.
Mhm.
Then let's close this. Continue without saving.
Just do any.
Yeah, and he's okay. Not promiscuous mode. Okay,
Close and then.
Yeah.
try it one more time. It's not letting me close.
You're just quit.
Yeah.
All right, let's reopen it. It's fine.
Hello.
Loop back. Yeah. Start a capture. Start it. Go back to my other terminal. And
Yeah.
boom.
Yeah.
A lot of traffic. So because this was a TCP scan, what you guys notice is in the protocol. Thank you. What you guys notice is in the protocol section is, as we expected, TCP, right? Remember, in this specific scan, I just scanned my local virtual hardware device, in this case, my Kali VM, right? So what you'll do in the situation of working through the labs in our cyber range is you'll edit the IP addresses such that they are what's inside of the cyber range, right? Those boxes that are going to be relevant in that area. Now, that's the kind of traffic that you get when you run Nmap, and this is what you're going to be able to see when you run it. Now, notice. Okay.
Well, one thing that I would like to note here, Michael, if you could blow up the Wireshark tab real quick.
Yep, sorry. I'm being slow right now, guys. My bad.
I know it's hard to see right now, but because this is a SYN scan, what a SYN scan does is it sends the SYN packet, we get a SYN act back. In order to be more stealthy, we don't send another SYN or acknowledgement packet back, so we don't complete the handshake. So a good way to notice CAP scans is when you get the red and gray contrast like this, like why on earth would this one IP address or IP be sending a whole bunch of SYN packets away? Wouldn't it want to complete the handshake and like actually make meaningful interaction? No. Well, an attacker is more likely going to do this, not complete that. That's a good thing to watch out for when you're a defender if someone's running SYN scan. See if it's SYN, also I have to reset that there.
Absolutely. Did you guys remember earlier how we discussed that you can break these down, right? From a defender's perspective, this is going to be one of your most useful areas. If you've worked with Wireshark, you know this. If not, this is going to be very, very important for you to know. So depending on the protocol, you can break it down by a different component. Here's our physical layer, right? You can look at what's in the payload. Sometimes you can see exfil in an actual packet. Maybe you can find credentials. Okay, I'm gonna give you an example. I'm looking for web logins, right? Maybe like failed login attempts. What kind of traffic would that generate? Well, I'll just tell you, like web forms, right? So HTTP traffic. I'll throw in a query on Wireshark and say http.response. I want to see what web pages were delivered to a system that I think is malicious. Maybe I actually am able to find the credentials down there when I go to transmission protocol and see, sorry, TCP, whatever, right? And actually see what it's going to show was entered in that session.
I was gonna say for the record, you can actually decrypt HTTPS with Wireshark as well.
You can.
More modern stuff. It's kind of a pain because you have to yank all of the certificates off the box, but it is actually something that because you can decrypt SSL traffic, including web logins instead of HTTPS sites.
Now do TLS. What's up? Now do TLS.
do all of it, just certain steps on that. Yeah, we're right.
Eight, yeah, all right, cool.
UDP scan is literally the same thing. You see pretty much the same results except for the protocol changes to UDP, and this is where I'm gonna call it. So thanks for your time today. Let me know if you guys have any questions. We'll send you some nice free resources to train on. In addition, it's not letting me open Zoom. In addition to looking for, oh, duh, bad. In addition to looking for like actual paid resources and the specific rooms and boxes we think are gonna go well for all of the specific tools that we just showed you today. And so, yeah, a brief run through, but we can go into further detail if we're training together. Just DM me and I'd be happy to sit down with you and work through labs together.
Again, CCD has a bunch of these forensics lab, which